So let's talk about your book now. Working out of the box, 40 stories of leading CEOs. Tell me about the book and what was your hypothesis?
So the book was based on the column. It is a compilation of the columns. But what we saw was when we put them all together was that a certain hypothesis and an archetype was emerging. And what we really saw was that CEOs were using the tangible office space, everything around them, whether that's furniture or technology or tools, to influence their intangible assets. And this was actually that relationship between that tangible office space and that intangible asset that they're trying to promote, whether it's their brand values or whether it's organizational capital, whether it's personal energy. That relationship hadn't really been explored.
Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a vodcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. If you're new to our channel, please consider subscribing to it and hit the bell icon so that you never miss an update. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very, very multifaceted individual from Mumbai, Aparna Piramal Raje. Aparna, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank
and
you.
Ashutosh, I should say something is that in my research, I often come across your show. So it's been a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Aparna is a columnist for The Mint, where she writes a column titled Head Office, where she has interviewed over 75 CEOs. She is an author, and I'm always very partial to authors, of a book titled Working Out of the Box, where she's spoken about 40 stories of leading CEOs. And she's very, very deeply involved in supporting the social sector with organizations like Makers Asylum, Arman, and Wonder Girls movement. And of course, she also teaches at the Anant National University. So, Aparna, my first question to you is Harvard Business School, author, columnist, support the social sector. You're constantly reinventing yourself. What are you seeking?
So I don't know, Ashutosh, if you've heard of the expression called the jungle gym career. Have you heard of that? Yeah, so basically it was popularized by Sheryl Sandberg in her book Lean In. And it just conveys this idea that we're going to be living longer than ever. So we're not going to have these normal corporate ladders that we're going up one step at a time, but we're going to have these careers where we're actually branching off in different directions and being lateral. And that's kind of what's happened to me, because I made this shift essentially from business and family business to writing. And then I grew what I also like to think of as a portfolio life, which I think you have also had in your life, where you've done more than one thing. So today I write, I teach, I speak, and I give. So these four activities kind of reinforce themselves, and they are all done for different reasons, but when they come together, they're like a whole. So I think there are different motivations underlying each of them, but this combination of the jungle gym career and the portfolio life, I think, is what defines a lot of us today. And I feel very fortunate that I have that privilege.
You know, I must compliment you. This entire thing of jungle gym, I have always thought people will get it much later on in life after they've pursued one passion. But I'm so impressed at the number of things that you're doing. But let's talk now about your avatar as a columnist and an author. You're a writer on design in a business context. Help me understand this phrase.
So, you know what, I'll just give you a little bit of context of how I got there. Was I actually finished my MBA at Harvard, and I was asked by my father to join our furniture business. And when I joined that, I realized that Harvard actually hadn't equipped me at all for design, because my MBA didn't use the word design anywhere. It didn't feature. But I had to run this company. And so what I realized was that we always think of design in a fashion sense or an interior sense, but we don't think of it in a business sense unless we think of something like Apple or the tech industry. But actually, design is all around us. So what I've tried to do with the writing is to put design in a mainstream business daily, where a business audience gets interested in design and can see things from a design point of view. And that's because we put the CEO at the heart of what we are doing. We put that person at the heart of the story.
Okay, and design as in designing the office, designing the environment. How would you define design?
Well, I think design is all around us, but in the context of the column, it's certainly workplace design.
Okay. And, when you talk about the intersection between business and design, for our viewers and listeners, can you give me an example?
Yeah, so I mean, for example, we interviewed the former head of WPP, Martin Sorrell, and he said that in our business, which is the media and communications business, real estate and workplaces are the second biggest investment we make. And he didn't think of it as a cost. He thought of it as an investment because he realized that it impacts the way people work, it impacts their productivity, it impacts their happiness. So he was able to see a clear link between the spatial environment and the kind of output and the productivity. If you like to think of it those in very, very business terms, which are very clinical terms, how the two are related. So that would be an example of that.
And, I've often wondered, when you are a columnist and you have to keep writing month after month, what goes into producing a column every month?
Well, I could ask you that because you are having more conversations with people than I am producing columns. But I think of it, we're probably doing the same thing in that we're having conversations and we're looking for interesting conversations with interesting people, who can relate. And who others will relate to. So that's what the endeavor has been. The column has been going for over 10 years now, actually. So, and it still continues to be hopefully quite popular.
And in each column you feature one CEO.
Yeah. And we also feature spaces. So sometimes we feature just CEOs, sometimes we feature just spaces.
Very interesting. So let's talk about your book now. Working out of the box, 40 stories of leading CEOs. Tell me about the book and what was your hypothesis?
So the book was based on the column. It is a compilation of the columns. But what we saw was when we put them all together was that a certain hypothesis and an archetype was emerging. And what we really saw was that CEOs were using the tangible office space, everything around them, whether that's furniture or technology or tools, to influence their intangible assets. And this was actually that relationship between that tangible office space and that intangible asset that they're trying to promote, whether it's their brand values or whether it's organizational capital, whether it's personal energy, that relationship hadn't really been explored. So we were trying to explore that through the book.
Okay. And do you have a second book coming out now?
I do, yes.
You do?
But it's different. It's on a different topic.
Okay, we'll talk about it at some other stage. So, when you look at yourself as a business leader, and you said, when you came into your family's design furniture business and you realized design was something not taught to you at Harvard Business School, what were some of your learnings, and some of your lessons when you were speaking to so many different people?
I think that, as I was quite young, I was in my 20s. And I was very fortunate to have a good team of people who were quite experienced operational managers working under me. I wouldn't say I'm the best operations manager at all. I think my family would agree with me on that front. But I was lucky with the team I had. I think that one of my biggest lessons is the importance of communication. I think you can never communicate enough with your team. And also this process of actively always giving feedback. I don't think we encourage that very much in maybe the Indian work environment, but I think that's really important on a real-time basis.
And for someone who has spoken to so many CEOs around over the last 10 years in your column, met so many people when you were running your own business, as an observer from outside, what do you think are some of the important qualities a CEO should have?
I mean, there's so many, and I think a lot of them are probably been said before. But I would say that authenticity is really important. I think we're right now just referring to the pandemic. We are living in some of a real tragedy is unfolding around us. So being able to be real, being able to act on the ground, being able to display compassion, be decisive. I think these are all qualities that people can actually judge their organizations for. So I think those are very visible traits that a CEO ought to exhibit.
So Aparna, the other part that I was very fascinated about is that you are giving back so much to the social sector. and not one, but there are three that I have read about: Makers Asylum, Arman, and the Wonder Girls movement. For our viewers and listeners, tell me about each of these.
Yeah. Actually, just a correction over there. There's less with Makers Asylum now, but there's another one that's there. To be honest, I don't think I'm giving so much in monetary terms, but I am trying to help with my time. So Arman is a tech for health nonprofit that's been around for some time, and they've been doing fantastic work with women and children. What they do is they send voice messages to pregnant women to tell them about how to take care of their baby, and they've scaled up hugely to millions of women across the country, so much so that the government has asked them to take over their programs. They've won international coveted awards, and they have a fabulous founder in Aparna Hegde, as well as a fabulous team. So frankly, Arman doesn't need much from me except maybe a little bit of fundraising, which I've helped them with in my community and also through our family business. Then with the other two I'm more involved with. Wonder Girls is a program for relatable role models for young women and boys, actually. So I came across this author, Varsha Adusumali. She wrote this book, you can see it, Wonder Girls.
Yeah.
And she came to meet me, and we were just talking, kind of author to author. And I just thought this was a fantastic book because it featured women who are all millennials doing extraordinary things, right from being a rugby coach of India, a rugby captain of India, to being Himalayan scientist, to being a casting director, airplane pilot, and all these things. And so we said, look, this young people need to know about this book. And so we tied up with Teach for India, and we taught this book in classrooms across the country. Then the pandemic hit, and so we couldn't actually teach the physical book, but we turned it into a digital program. So now Teach for India teachers can actually connect with role models, and these girls come over a Zoom call, and the students can interact with these role models and interact and discuss what their careers have been like. And for most of these young women and boys, it's a totally changing experience because they've never interacted with a professional of that caliber before, and we've got some amazing feedback.
So again, I'd love to, understand from maybe some interesting anecdotes in that you have seen how this has impacted the lives of the young boys and girls.
So the boys say that, we never thought girls could do anything.
Okay.
And they are like, we now know that girls can do a lot, and we want to be like these girls, and we are inspired by these girls. Okay. And these girls, they send us these huge artworks of, this is when they write poems to us, and they give us, all these sketches of what these girls have inspired them to do and what their feelings were about their own careers. So it's very nice. And the third one, which I'm just getting started with, is a mental health nonprofit startup called Talk to Me. And there is a psychotherapist by the name of Dr. Narendra Kingar. He's been in the field for about 30 years. So he wants to take mental health to the sections of society that otherwise would never have accessed it. So I think in these COVID times, that is just so critical. And in any case, this is a sector that I'm very interested in. So I'm just trying to, again, support in terms of the fundraising side, of course, but also in terms of the strategy and how to develop it.
And what are some of the mental health challenges that are being faced by the young people in our country today?
I mean, India has amongst the highest rates of suicide in the world. So, I think there's anything from anxiety, depression, serious mental disorders. So you name it right now. I think issues of domestic violence have gone up hugely since the pandemic. So I think that there just are a lot of issues, and we are nowhere as a country equipped to handle this.
That is true. And, I was talking to some other people the other day on mental health challenges. And at least now, I mean, I'm much, much older than you. From my vintage, this wasn't even spoken about, but at least now we're beginning to talk about mental health challenges.
Yeah, and the point I would really like to make, Ashutosh, is mental health is not really restricted to somebody who's got a severe mental health disorder. It's a society issue. Like I was just talking about domestic violence. If there's a woman who's being beaten by her husband, that's a domestic violence issue and a gender issue as much as it is a mental health issue. She's in depression for that reason, then there's a lot of intersectionality between mental health and society. It's at the heart of what we do. Just like you used to say earlier, that you invest in the girl child, you'll be investing in so many things related to society. I think the same kind of multiplier effect happens with mental health, and it's a COVID issue also. So today we see a lot of funding going in for the, obviously for the cylinders and making sure that people get the immediate healthcare that they require. But this is also very much a corollary of that.
But you mean COVID has had a very significant impact on mental health problems?
Yeah, I mean, whoever I've spoken to has said that their demand has gone through the roof, and whether that cuts across, whether that's corporates, people worried about their jobs, people worried about just anxiety and stress in general, the fatigue of working from home, to people, at a different section of society.
Amazing. So I'm going to now move on, and I'm going to talk a little bit about gender diversity. As a woman leader who has seen large companies run large companies, my question to you is that in India, is this whole issue or talk of gender diversity a lot of lip service, or is something genuinely happening?
I can't speak for the whole of India. I wouldn't be the right representative to do that. But I genuinely feel there is more discussion of it. I think people are making an effort. But the numbers are not necessarily moving. And to be fair, I don't think the numbers have also moved in the West particularly. Like if you look at senior leadership at the top, or if you look at board representation, I'm sure they're still stuck in the single digits or the low teens, and because the fundamental factors of things like childcare and people dropping out have not really in that way changed. And I think those challenges still exist very much in India. So I think there is an attempt, and particularly maybe at the entry level, to make sure that there is more diversity. But at the senior level, I think those challenges still very much exist.
Very interesting. And what, in your opinion, can be done to expedite the balance?
Role models. That's why we do what we do. I think it's really important. And I think it's important to have relatable role models, I think that people that you can actually say that this is someone I can be. It's not somebody who's like 5 levels above you. And, you can never aspire to be that person. So I think role models are really important.
Interesting. So I'm now going to move to the last segment of our conversation, which is some questions for you personally. My first question to you, Aparna, is that, in a life where you've done so many different things and you're doing so many new things all the time, what would you say are 3 key milestones in your life or your career?
So I think Ergo was a huge milestone. I think initially, I had a period where it worked out really well for me. And then there was a period where it didn't work out so well. So I think it was a milestone both ways. But it gave me a lot of confidence initially. And then for some period, I got pretty stressed about it. So that was one. The writing, definitely, because that has allowed me to find my own voice and create a new identity. And I think the nonprofit work now, which I hope will have a more lasting impact than anything else.
Wonderful. My next question to you is that for someone who is giving back in terms of time and also raising so much money, what are some of the core values you believe in?
Okay, so purpose is really important. I think we have to wake up in the morning and have some purpose. And I forgot the expression now, but life of purpose is the purpose of life or something, I think there's an expression like that. Okay. So that's important. Optimistic. I think it's important to be optimistic. I'm wearing red lipstick, even though we have a pandemic raging. So I think we have to keep some optimism around us.
I agree with you.
Yeah, integrity is important. I think a lot of people would say that. I think kindness is important. I think we overlook that. And I think that I've realized that much more as you get older. And then I would say humor and playfulness is a big part of who I am. And I think that's an important value. So these
Fantastic. And from where you stand today in life, what does success mean to Aparna?
That's a really good question, because I used to be so tied up with notions of success as kind of power and influence, and especially coming from Harvard and going to Oxford and all of that sort of associations. But now I think success is happiness. And I think if you are happy, then you are successful.
Very interesting. And a follow-up question from that is, who or what inspires you?
So I think immediately, and speaking of relatable role models, like my mother is a huge inspiration in her writing and whatever she does.
Yeah.
There's also a friend of hers actually called Linda Grattan. She is a professor at the London Business School, but she also has this life where she writes, she speaks, and she teaches. So I very much learn a lot from her and the mechanics of how I put my life together. But then also, I think a lot of people, who have shown courage despite their vulnerabilities and gone on to do things, I think they are really inspiring stories. And many of the time, I get these stories like from my children's textbooks or something, or they'll come across these, they teach them in school. Somebody who's been in a terrible train accident and she's lost a leg and she's gone on to climb Mount Everest. I think that, they might be kind of tropes, but they are very inspiring stories about tackling vulnerability.
Amazing, amazing. So I have time for 2 more questions for you. My next question is that if you, Aparna, were a role model for millions of children who closely followed you and your life choices, what is the one thing you would change in yourself?
Yeah, so not to go by the external scorecard and not to seek like external validation, because I think when you're young, trophies and prizes and, all of that are really important. Not to say that you shouldn't get good grades, because I'm also a parent and I would say that you need to get good grades. But I think that to hinge your personal sense of self-worth on some sort of external validation comes very easily when you're young. And I think to look for that inner scorecard, I think it took me a while to kind of get to that stage where I was happy being myself in that way. So that's what I would change.
Fabulous. And my last question to you, Aparna, and this is a question on failure. And I've often asked this question to a lot of my guests, because I've had this long-held hypothesis that Indian parents or Asian parents don't teach children it's okay to fail. We're always taught come first, go to the head of the line, etc. And that manifests itself in our behavior patterns. Yet we fail. My question to you is, what have been some of your learnings from some of your mistakes?
You can always get a second chance.
Okay.
I think that whatever you do, you can always get a second chance.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure speaking to you. I mean,
nice.
Very seldom have I met someone as young as you who is so clear on what she wants. Thank you for such an amazing set of answers that you've given to me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.